Cops handcuffed black Marine sniper. Then a general entered the courtroom to apologize. The courtroom fell silent as the door swung open. A four-star general in full dress uniform strode purposefully down the center aisle, medals gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Marcus Johnson, still in his orange jumpsuit with hands cuffed before him, straightened his back instinctively, the military bearing impossible to suppress even after being treated like a common criminal for the past 72 hours. The judge's gavel hovered midair as confusion rippled through the gallery. Nobody expected the commanding officer of the entire Marine Corps forces command to appear at a routine arraignment in this small Virginia courthouse. "Your Honor," the general announced, his voice carrying the weight of 30 years of command, "I need to address this court regarding Gunnery Sergeant Johnson." He locked eyes with Marcus across the room. "A grave injustice has occurred." 3 days earlier, Marcus Johnson had been enjoying a rare weekend of leave. After 4 combat tour and 12 confirmed kills as one of the Marine Corps' most decorated snipers, he'd earned this time with his teenage son, Darius. The fishing trip to Lake Champlain had been planned for months, a chance to reconnect after too many missed birthdays and school events. Marcus adjusted the rear-view mirror of his restored 1987 Chevy Blazer, a project that had kept him sane during his last stateside deployment. Cassette tapes from his collection scattered across the passenger seat, Earth, Wind and Fire, the Commodores, and Marvin Gaye, the soundtrack of his own childhood that he hoped to share with Darius, who sat slouched beside him, more interested in his smartphone than his father's attempts at connection. "You know, when I was your age, we actually had to talk to each other on road trips," Marcus said with a half-smile, reaching to lower the volume on September, the song that had played at his wedding to Darius' mother before the divorce. "No phones, no tablets, just conversation and terrible gas station snacks." Darius looked up, offering a reluctant smile. "Dad, that sounds absolutely brutal. How did you survive?" Their laughter was interrupted by flashing blue lights in the mirror. Marcus checked his speed, 5 under the limit. He'd been meticulous, knowing that his out-of-state plates and the color of his skin made him an easy target in certain counties. He pulled over carefully, positioning his hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. "Watch what I do, son," he said quietly. "Keep your hands where they can see them, no sudden movements." The tension in the car thickened as 2 officers approached, one on each side. Marcus rolled down his window, maintaining perfect composure, the same steady nerves that had served him through countless high-pressure operations overseas. "License and registration," the officer demanded without preamble, flashlight beam sweeping across the interior, lingering on the military duffel in the back seat. Marcus explained that his identification was in his wallet, narrating his movements before reaching slowly for his back pocket. The officer squinted at the license. "You're a long way from Camp Lejeune, Mr. Johnson." "Gunnery Sergeant Johnson," Marcus corrected gently. "Just on leave with my son, heading to Lake Champlain for some fishing." The officer's partner had circled to the passenger side, his attention fixed on the duffel bag. "What's in the bag, sir?" "Fishing gear and some clothes," Marcus replied, maintaining the calm tone that had talked frightened young Marines through their first firefights. "Mind if we take a look?" It wasn't really a question. "Would you like to continue watching this compelling story? Subscribe now so you don't miss a moment of this powerful narrative." When the officers opened the duffel bag, everything changed. The fishing tackle box wasn't what caught their attention. It was the long, narrow case beneath it. Marcus started to explain, but before he could get the words out, he was being yanked from the vehicle, forced to the ground with a knee in his back. Darius watched in horror as his father, a man who had served his country with distinction through 4 combat tour, was handcuffed and read his rights. "Illegal transportation of a firearm across state lines," the officer said, holding up the case containing Marcus's competition shooting rifle. The same rifle he used in the Marine Corps marksmanship competitions. The same rifle he had proper documentation and permits for in his glove compartment. Darius, paralyzed with fear and anger, fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking as he hit record, capturing the moment his hero father was pushed into the back of a police cruiser, face pressed against the window, eyes fixed on his son standing alone beside the Blazer as twilight descended. The local detention center smelled of industrial cleaner and despair. Marcus sat on the metal bench, back straight, mind racing through protocols and regulations. He had followed every rule for transporting his competition rifle. The paperwork was in order. The ammunition was stored separately. Nothing was illegal about what he was doing. Yet here he sat, charged with multiple felonies that could end his military career, while Darius was left in the temporary custody of local social services. "One phone call," the processing officer said, sliding a landline phone that looked straight out of the early 90s across the desk. Marcus dialed the only number he knew would matter: Colonel Thomas Wilson, his former commanding officer from his second tour in Afghanistan. The same man who had witnessed Marcus save an entire platoon by holding a strategic position for 48 hours without sleep, food, or reinforcements. "Wilson," came the gruff answer. "Sir, it's Gunny Johnson. I've got a situation." The processing of Marcus's case moved with unusual speed. Within 48 hours, he was standing before a judge for arraignment, still in custody, still in shock. The local prosecutor painted him as a dangerous man transporting weapons through their peaceful community. Marcus's court-appointed attorney looked overwhelmed and underprepared. And then the courtroom door opened. If you're enjoying this story, take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. General Michael Harrington stood before the court, radiating authority. "Your Honor, I've reviewed this case personally. Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Johnson is one of the finest Marines under my command. His competition rifle is registered and documented. He was transporting it legally for a sanctioned Marine Corps exhibition event scheduled this weekend." The general approached the bench, handing over a file. "These are copies of all relevant permits and authorizations. Also included is Sergeant Johnson's service record, including his Bronze Star with Combat V, 2 Purple Hearts, and his selection as the Marine Corps top shooter 3 years running." The judge reviewed the documents, her expression shifting from skepticism to concern. The prosecutor shuffled papers nervously. "Furthermore," the general continued, "I've spoken with the police commissioner this morning. The body camera footage from the arresting officers shows clear violations of procedure and questionable judgment. That footage, along with video recorded by Sergeant Johnson's son, reveals concerning conduct that demands further investigation." Marcus looked toward the gallery where Darius now sat, reunited with him thanks to Colonel Wilson's intervention. His son's eyes held a mix of relief, pride, and lingering anger at what they'd experienced. The judge cleared her throat. "In light of this new evidence, all charges against Gunnery Sergeant Johnson are dismissed." She turned to Marcus. "You are free to go, Sergeant. My apologies for this situation." But General Harrington wasn't finished. He turned to face Marcus directly. "Gunnery Sergeant Johnson, on behalf of the United States Marine Corps and the law enforcement community that failed you, I offer my sincere apology. What happened to you was wrong. A man who has risked his life repeatedly for his country deserves better than to be humiliated in front of his son." The general stepped forward and personally removed Marcus's handcuffs. The symbolic gesture wasn't lost on anyone in the courtroom, least of all Darius, who watched with tears streaming down his face. That evening, as Marcus and Darius finally continued their journey to Lake Champlain in the now-retrieved Blazer, the radio played Marvin Gaye's "What's Going On?" The irony wasn't lost on either of them. "Dad," Darius said quietly, looking at his father with new eyes, "when they had you on the ground, how did you stay so calm?" Marcus was silent for a moment, the question heavier than his son could know. "Because getting angry wouldn't have kept you safe, and keeping you safe is what matters most to me." Darius nodded slowly. "The general coming to court like that? Does that happen often?" "No," Marcus smiled faintly. "That happens never." As they pulled up to the lakeside cabin, the setting sun painted the water in shades of orange and gold. Marcus looked at his son, no longer the child he'd left behind during deployments, but a young man witnessing the complicated world he was inheriting. "What happened was wrong," Marcus said finally. "But something right came from it too. You saw that there are good people in uniform and bad ones. You saw that justice is complicated but worth fighting for. And you saw that your old man's connections aren't too shabby." They both laughed, the tension of the past days finally breaking. Now, Marcus said, grabbing his tackle box, let me show you how we caught fish back in the Stone Age before you could Google how to bait a hook. If this story moved you, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below. Stories like Marcus's deserve to be told, remembered, and learned from.